There's a critical conversation that modern medicine has consistently failed to have with men, especially those of you who have passed the age of 60. It's a conversation about a fundamental pillar of your health that has been systematically ignored, dismissed as a matter of lifestyle rather than medicine, or worse, shrouded in a lifetime of cultural taboo and dangerous misinformation. We meticulously track your heart health, your cholesterol panels, your blood sugar levels, and the condition of your joints. But we almost never discuss a biological system in your body that is not only profoundly intertwined with all of those things, but which also serves as one of the most accurate early warning indicators for your overall vitality and longevity. I am referring to your sexual health, and what you've been led to believe, or more to the point, what you've never been told at all, could be silently fueling a physical decline that you've been conditioned to accept as an inevitable consequence of aging. I am here to tell you that much of it is not. For the next few moments, I ask you to set aside your preconceptions, because the clinical information I'm about to share could fundamentally alter how you manage your health for the remainder of your life. My name is Brian Caldwell. For more than 3 decades, I have dedicated my entire practice to the field of men's health, guiding thousands of men just like you through the complex physiological changes that accompany aging. I have seen, time and time again, how a simple lack of knowledge in this one specific area can create devastating ripple effects, impacting everything from a man's mood and cognitive function to his core cardiovascular integrity. This is not about the pursuit of pleasure. This is about the preservation of function, the science of longevity, and the importance of understanding your body as the deeply interconnected system that it is. Let's begin with a biological law that is as immutable for your vascular structures as it is for your skeletal muscles. Use it or lose it. This is not a hollow motivational slogan. It is a clinical and physiological reality. The functional architecture of the penis is composed of 2 chambers known as the corpora cavernosa. These are not hollow tubes. They are intricate structures made of a sponge-like matrix of elastic, smooth muscle tissue. For this highly specialized tissue to remain healthy, pliable, and functional, it requires one thing above all else: regular, complete oxygenation. This vital, oxygen-rich blood flow is delivered almost exclusively through the process of erection. When an erection occurs, these chambers fill completely with blood under pressure, which stretches the smooth muscle fibers, nourishes the surrounding tissues, and keeps the entire structure elastic and responsive. When this process becomes infrequent, the consequences are gradual, insidious, but ultimately severe. The smooth muscle tissue begins to atrophy. From disuse, a process called corporal fibrosis can set in, which is the slow, progressive replacement of that flexible, dynamic muscle tissue with stiff, non-compliant collagen fibers. Imagine a high-performance rubber band that hasn't been stretched in years. It becomes brittle, develops micro tears, and loses its fundamental to expand and contract. This is precisely what happens on a microscopic level inside the body when erections cease. The tissue's capacity to engorge with blood is physically diminished, making it progressively more difficult to achieve and sustain a firm erection. This entire process is mediated by a critical molecule called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator, meaning it signals the smooth muscles in the walls of your blood vessels to relax, allowing them to open up and let more blood flow through. Healthy erectile function is almost entirely dependent on a sufficient release of nitric oxide within the penile arteries. The production of this molecule, in turn, depends on the health of the endothelium, the delicate inner lining of all your blood vessels. When the endothelium is damaged by factors like high blood pressure, high blood sugar, or inflammation from a poor diet, its ability to produce nitric oxide plummets. This is why maintaining this function is not a selfish act. It's a crucial aspect of your vascular maintenance. Many men operate under the dangerous misconception that if they aren't sexually active with a partner, this function is simply dormant, like a car parked in a garage, waiting to be started up again. This is a profound biological error. Your body has its own built-in maintenance program, nocturnal erections, which occur reflexively during the REM stage of sleep. In a healthy younger man, this happens 3 to 5 times a night. This is not driven by sexual dreams. It is a purely physiological reflex designed to oxygenate the tissue and keep the plumbing in perfect working order. However, with age, and often due to underlying health conditions, the frequency, duration, and rigidity of these automatic erections decline significantly. This means that the body's primary self-maintenance system is already becoming less reliable. Therefore, conscious deliberate arousal becomes not just a matter of choice, but a matter of clinical necessity. By actively stimulating erections, you are manually compensating for the decline in this automatic process, ensuring those delicate tissues receive the oxygen they require to remain viable. The cost of neglecting this is far greater than the loss of sexual function. Poor erectile health is now recognized in cardiology as one of the strongest independent predictors of future cardiovascular events, such as heart attack and stroke. The blood vessels in the penis are significantly smaller and more sensitive than those in the heart or brain. They are often the very first to show the clinical signs of endothelial dysfunction and plaque buildup. If blood flow is being compromised there, it is an unequivocal warning sign that the same disease process is likely underway in the larger, more critical arteries throughout your body. Now, let's pivot from the necessity of use to the quality of that use. This is where countless men, even those who believe they are maintaining function, unintentionally inflict harm upon themselves. Over decades, you may have developed a routine of self-pleasure that is formulaic, rushed, mechanical, and focused exclusively on achieving a physical release. This pattern of what can be called mindless masturbation, especially when it is coupled with the hyper-stimulating, rapid-fire imagery of modern pornography, forges a problematic neurological pathway in your brain. Your central nervous system is a remarkably efficient learning machine, and it learns best through intense, focused repetition. When you consistently teach your body to respond only to a very specific high-pressure, high-friction grip, often called a death grip, or to a relentless stream of extreme visual input, you are conditioning your entire arousal response to a level of stimulation that simply cannot be replicated in a real-world, intimate setting. Your nervous system becomes progressively desensitized to normal, subtle sensation. The gentle, nuanced touch of a partner can begin to feel muted or insufficient. Not because there is anything wrong with you or them, but because you have neurologically trained your brain to expect a level of sensory input that is artificial and unsustainable. This can also keep your body in a state of low-grade stress, governed by the sympathetic nervous system, the fight-or-flight response. True, deep arousal and optimal blood flow are best achieved in a relaxed state, governed by the parasympathetic nervous system, or rest and digest. Rushing towards a goal keeps you in that tense, sympathetic state, actively working against your own physiology. This conditioning can lead directly to clinical issues I treat every single day in my practice, from porn-induced erectile dysfunction to severe delayed ejaculation. These are not signs that your body is irreversibly broken. They are signs that it has been meticulously, if unintentionally, trained in the wrong direction. The emotional consequences, performance anxiety, frustration, shame, and avoidance of intimacy, are immense. Reversing this requires a fundamental shift in your approach, away from a goal-oriented mechanical act and towards a mindful, sensory-focused experience that allows your brain and body to heal and resensitize. Part 2. This entire process of physical and neurological conditioning does not happen in a vacuum. It exerts a powerful and direct influence on your body's internal chemistry and the health of your glandular systems. Let's focus on an organ that becomes a source of considerable anxiety for nearly every man as he ages: the prostate. The primary biological function of the prostate gland is to produce seminal fluid, the alkaline liquid that nourishes and transports sperm during the process of ejaculation. What is crucial to understand is that throughout your adult life, your prostate is in a constant state of fluid production. This system is fundamentally designed for flow and regular expulsion. It is not designed for long-term storage. When ejaculation ceases for extended periods, that fluid does not simply get reabsorbed or disappear. It can accumulate and build up within the prostate's intricate network of microscopic ducts and glands, leading to a condition known as prostatic congestion. This creates a stagnant, boggy, and low oxygen environment within the core of the gland itself. The consequences of this chronic congestion are far from trivial. It can be a primary driver of chronic non-bacterial inflammation, a condition clinically referred to as prostatitis. This inflammation can cause a host of disruptive and uncomfortable urinary symptoms: a persistent feeling of pressure or fullness in the pelvis, a frequent and often urgent need to urinate, especially at night, a noticeably weaker urinary stream, and sometimes even a dull ache or pain during urination or ejaculation. Many men experience these symptoms and immediately self-diagnose them as benign prostatic hyperplasia, BPH, the common age-related enlargement of the prostate, or they simply resign themselves to the idea that this is an unavoidable misery of getting older. While BPH is indeed prevalent, chronic inflammation from congestion can significantly mimic or worsen its symptoms. Regular ejaculation functions as a natural and necessary flushing mechanism for the entire prostatic system. It effectively clears out the old, stagnant fluid, along with any accumulated cellular debris, potential bacteria, or inflammatory byproducts that may have collected. Think of it as regularly flushing the filter in a complex plumbing system. It prevents buildup, reduces pressure, and keeps the entire mechanism running cleanly and efficiently. The importance of this process extends beyond mere physical comfort. It is now well understood in oncology that chronic inflammation is a key catalyst for cellular damage and DNA mutation, processes that can eventually lead to the development of cancer. While no single behavior can guarantee the prevention of cancer, creating and maintaining a healthy, non-inflamed prostatic environment is a significant and proactive step in risk reduction. Major epidemiological studies have consistently shown a strong, dose-dependent correlation between a higher lifetime frequency of ejaculation and a significantly lower risk of being diagnosed with prostate cancer. The clinical data strongly suggests that an active system is a healthier and more resilient system. To neglect this essential biological function, out of a mistaken belief that it's no longer relevant, is to overlook a critical aspect of your own long-term, preventative health maintenance. This core principle of activity supports health is even more pronounced when we examine its effect on your hormonal profile, specifically your testosterone levels. Testosterone is the principal male androgen, and its role extends far beyond your sex drive. It is fundamentally essential for maintaining lean muscle mass and bone density, regulating the distribution of body fat, facilitating the production of red blood cells, sustaining your daily energy levels, and ensuring cognitive clarity, focus, and emotional stability. It is a biological fact that testosterone levels naturally begin to decline with age, often by about 1% per year after the age of 30. However, this is not a fixed, uncontrollable downward spiral. The rate of this decline can be dramatically accelerated by lifestyle choices, and conversely, it can be mitigated and managed. Your body's complex endocrine system, specifically the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal, HPG axis, operates on an intricate feedback loop. Sexual activity, encompassing everything from psychological desire and physical arousal through to orgasm, provides crucial positive feedback to this system. It sends a clear biological signal to your brain that this powerful hormonal machinery is still in high demand. In response, the brain releases hormones that signal the testes to maintain robust testosterone production. When sexual activity and arousal cease entirely, that vital feedback loop is broken. The body, in its inherent drive for efficiency, begins to interpret this prolonged lack of demand as a signal to downregulate the entire production line. It essentially concludes, this function is no longer being used, so we can conserve the energy and resources allocated to it. At this point, the drop in testosterone often becomes more precipitous. A crucial nuance here is the difference between total testosterone and free testosterone. Much of the testosterone in your blood is bound to a protein called sex hormone-binding globulin, which makes it unavailable for your cells to use. The unbound, usable portion is called free testosterone. As men age, SHBG levels often rise, binding up more testosterone and further reducing the amount of free, active hormone. You start to feel the effects of this deficiency not just in the bedroom, but in every facet of your life. A pervasive fatigue sets in that a full night's sleep doesn't seem to remedy. You notice it's much harder to maintain muscle tone and far easier to gain weight, particularly visceral fat around your midsection. Your mental sharpness may dull into a brain fog, and you might find yourself more irritable, apathetic, or emotionally flat. Men frequently attribute these debilitating changes solely to the number of candles on their birthday cake, but they are often a direct consequence of both the natural hormonal decline and the prolonged state of inactivity that significantly speeds it up. Re-engaging with your sexual self, even through intentional solo activity, helps to reactivate that critical feedback loop. It's a way of reminding your entire biology that you are still vital, still engaged, and that these systems are still mission critical. This brings us back to the brain's role, because the very tool many men turn to in an attempt to stay engaged, pornography, can ultimately sabotage the entire hormonal and neurological system. As I mentioned, modern internet pornography is a form of neurochemical hyperstimulation. It relentlessly targets the brain's dopamine reward pathway. The intense novelty and escalating nature of this content provides a dopamine surge that dwarfs what natural, real-world intimacy can provide. With repeated exposure, your brain's dopamine receptors become less sensitive. You require a bigger, more intense stimulus to achieve the same feeling. It's not a failure of character. It's a predictable consequence of brain chemistry. The tragic cost is that real life, with its normal pace and subtle interactions, begins to feel chemically bland and unrewarding. Your innate ability to feel genuine arousal from your own imagination, or from the authentic touch of another person, is chemically and neurologically blunted. Part 3. The profound impact of these physical and neurochemical processes cannot be logically or medically separated from your mental and emotional well-being. For decades, and perhaps for your entire life, the very subject of self-pleasure has been inextricably linked with a quiet, pervasive, and culturally ingrained sense of shame. It was something to be concealed, an act often framed as immature, a vice, a sign of weakness, or a moral failing. These powerful early messages, whether they came from family, culture, or religion, do not simply evaporate with the passage of time. They become embedded deep within our subconscious programming and continue to influence our behavior, our self-perception, and ultimately our physical health in profound and often unrecognized ways. This unresolved, lingering shame is not merely a fleeting emotion. It functions as a chronic psychological stressor. From a purely physiological perspective, feelings of guilt and shame reliably trigger the body's sympathetic nervous system, the well-known fight-or-flight response. This activation results in the release of stress hormones from the adrenal glands, most notably cortisol. While cortisol is essential for survival, in short, acute bursts to help you navigate an immediate threat, chronically elevated cortisol levels are incredibly corrosive to the human body over the long term. They actively suppress your immune system, leaving you more vulnerable to infections and illness. They disrupt the architecture of deep, restorative sleep, which is critical for cellular repair and memory consolidation. They contribute directly to insulin resistance, a precursor to type 2 diabetes, and promote the storage of dangerous visceral fat around your organs. They can chronically elevate your blood pressure, placing a constant strain on your entire cardiovascular system. And most critically, sustained high levels of cortisol are neurotoxic, meaning they can damage brain cells, particularly in the hippocampus, the area essential for memory, and the prefrontal cortex, which governs decision-making and emotional regulation. So, when a man experiences a subconscious pang of guilt or shame every time he engages in a perfectly natural and healthy biological function, he is, in a very real sense, administering a small, repeated dose of a toxic stress chemical to his own body. Over a period of years and decades, the cumulative effect of this chronic stress is significant. It creates a state of low-grade systemic inflammation and anxiety, and it is a major contributing factor in the high rates of depression seen in older men. This is why I firmly believe that one of the most impactful health interventions a man can make for himself is to consciously and deliberately work to dismantle this outdated and harmful sense of shame. It involves an internal reframing, recognizing that your sexuality is an integral and vital component of your overall health, not something separate from or in opposition to it. It is about learning to approach your own body with a sense of clinical care, dignity, and respect, rather than judgment and secrecy. This internal shift does far more than just improve your mood. It can tangibly lower your baseline cortisol levels, improve the quality of your sleep, and reduce the immense physiological burden that chronic stress places on every single organ system in your body. It is a potent form of preventative medicine that requires no prescription, only a courageous change in perspective. This logically leads us to what I consider the single most dangerous and overarching risk factor for a man's holistic health as he ages, and it underpins every single issue we have discussed thus far: isolation. And I am not speaking merely of the social condition of living alone. I am referring to a deeper, more insidious sensory and emotional isolation. It is the state of no longer being physically touched, and just as critically, no longer touching oneself with mindfulness, intention, and care. Human beings are biologically hardwired for physical contact. Touch is not a psychological luxury. It is a fundamental biological necessity. When you are touched in a caring and safe manner, whether it is a simple hug, a reassuring hand on the shoulder, or intimate contact, your brain releases a powerful neuropeptide called oxytocin. Oxytocin is the direct neurochemical antidote to cortisol. It is the primary activator of the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest, digest, and heal state. It actively lowers blood pressure, reduces the production of stress hormones, calms anxiety, and fosters powerful feelings of trust, social, bonding, and profound well-being. When a man's life becomes devoid of touch, his body begins to exist in a state of chronic oxytocin deficit. He is deprived of this essential calming, restorative, and healing chemical. His nervous system can become chronically and dangerously biased towards the vigilant, stressful, cortisol-driven state. This is where the practice of mindful self-touch becomes so vitally important, especially for the millions of men who are widowed, divorced, or otherwise without a regular partner. When you cease to connect with your own body through touch, you are inadvertently reinforcing this neurochemical state of isolation. Your brain begins to interpret the total lack of physical contact from yourself or others as a primal signal of social abandonment and threat. The sensory circuits in your brain that are designed to register pleasure, safety, and connection start to go dormant from disuse. This marks the beginning of a slow, quiet fade, not just of your physical functions, but of your emotional vibrancy. You begin to feel less alive, less present, and less engaged with the world, because the very sense that connects you most directly to it has been allowed to shut down. This is not speculation. The devastating health consequences of loneliness and isolation are robustly documented in medical literature and are now considered to be as detrimental to your longevity as smoking 15 cigarettes a day or severe obesity. It is a direct and powerful contributor to major depression, accelerated cognitive decline, and increased all-cause mortality. The simple act of touching your own body with mindful, respectful attention is a powerful declaration to your entire nervous system that you are still present, still connected, and still worthy of care. It is a way to self-generate some of the very neurochemicals, like oxytocin, that you may be critically lacking. It is a direct, hands-on intervention against the corrosive and life-shortening effects of isolation. Therefore, what I want you to take away from our time together is this: your sexual health is not a trivial footnote to your overall health. It is a central and non-negotiable chapter. It is a direct reflection of your cardiovascular integrity, your hormonal balance, your neurological health, and your emotional resilience. The culturally inherited beliefs that this part of your life should be quietly retired after a certain age are not just factually incorrect, they are medically harmful. You are not broken or past a point of no return. Your body, right at this moment, possesses a profound and innate capacity for healing, adaptation, and responsiveness. It wants to function. It wants to feel. The path forward does not begin with a prescription pad. It begins with a choice to reject a lifetime of shame, a choice to understand and work in harmony with your own biology, not in opposition to it. It starts with the simple act of setting aside a few minutes each day, not with a demanding goal of performance, but with a simple intention of presence. It is a commitment to your own vitality, on your own terms. It is one of the most profound acts of self-care you can ever undertake.